Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 7th, 2020 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. And would like to recognize those who are joining us remotely. So if you'd all chime in when I call your name. Deb White. Heidi Duran.
Here. Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
And Sebastian McDougall.
Here.
Great. There were no customers to be heard, so we're going to skip that part. Oh, excuse me. There weren't. We got to approve the agenda first. So I take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move approval.
Second.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion by Duran, second by McDougall to approve the meeting's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, number 3, item 3, approve the consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
I make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Duran to move to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Customers to be heard, we have none. Old business, anybody have any old business? Okay, seeing none, moving on to item number 8, reports. City Council. What? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple things. Council approved the professional services for the water tower design, so that passed on an 8-0 vote. And in the forum, it said we were getting ready to go, and so things are moving that way. And second thing is, like MPS, we are in the middle of a city manager search, and we kind of nailed down some of the basic processes before we go on to that for a search for the city manager. So a couple things we discussed last Monday night. Thanks. That's all I have.
I'd like to note that Joel Paulson has joined the meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Pardon me?
if I could add to the council report,
Absolutely.
without divulging too much information, because we had an executive session on the matter. But as you and others have, I'm sure, heard, we went into executive session to discuss options for the former power plant land. I just want to make clear that it was not necessarily to discuss the sale of that land. It was to discuss options for that land. And I did have a conversation with general manager about there potentially being some documents within the MPS library that discuss a TIF on that property. There's also a lot of information within the MPS, I'll call it the library, on the cleanup of that site and the extent of contamination at that site. So I believe it would be in MPS' best interest for us to be involved in that process as much as possible. And if we could find any of that, any information related to that TIF agreement, that would be helpful.
Interim General Manager Travis Schmidt here. Yes, we have been talking with city staff about that. We did provide them some of the reports from the demolition of that site and the removal of the contaminants and concerns with that site as well too. I'll look into the TIF stuff and see if we can provide that to city staff as well. I did have a conversation with Chrissy Lashevsky this afternoon about that as well too. So we are working to get some of that information provided to them for the RFP that they're working on.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I know that MPS spent a lot of money in the cleanup, and if any of that money could come back to MPS, if it is developed at a later date, it would be helpful for MPS to get maybe some of that investment return.
Yep, agree.
Thanks, Hetty. I was part of that process too, so thanks for bringing that up too.
Yep.
Yeah, any public service commission meetings, events? Anybody have anything to add? Okay, seeing no response, I'll go on to the manager's report. Travis?
Sure. Just one quick update on the report tonight. Water plant supervisor Mark Pritchard has been in contact with the DNR, and they have been talking about our Buffalo Well stuff that we've got going on. I'm going to have Mark come up and speak to the information that we have on that. This is going to be probably a two-part piece of information tonight, really just introductory as we're just getting into it, but we wanted to provide that information to you so you're aware of what's coming down the line for this. And from here, I'm going to let Mark speak to the details of it.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. As Travis had mentioned, over the past month and a half or so, myself and some of the Water Division staff have been in contact with staff representatives from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources.
Can't hear him.
Oh, mic on.
Can you hear me? All right, are we good? All right. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. Thank you, Travis. As he had mentioned here a brief moment ago, myself and some additional Water Division staff have been in contact with staff members from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources in regards to well use and how that looks long-term for our discussions with the potential Sabin well field. As a quick background, MPS has a very long history of Buffalo aquifer use. We actually started pumping water from that aquifer system all the way back in 1948. And since then, there's been many, many studies and many dollars spent trying to further understand the hydraulics of that aquifer system, as well as how to be as sustainable as possible with our usage and to be good stewards of that resource. That has been included with a lot of work all the way back to 2008, including wellhead protection activities, fully rehabilitating all of the well field pump houses, as well as the Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan that we've mentioned here throughout the past few years of commission meetings. The heart of the discussion that we had with the DNR staff involved the results of some updated modeling runs that we had provided to the DNR staff. When we built our Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan, part of that plan involved having a model that would allow us to determine how that aquifer would respond to increased pumping during a drought scenario. So in that drought scenario, we had a couple different options that we had incorporated into our total management plan that we forwarded to DNR for them to review and see if they could glean any more information off of that existing model. So on May the 28th of this year, they gave us the updates of those model runs, and they had a few concerns with some of the runs that they had where they put in increased allocation usage from the wells. And we discussed the historical use of the aquifer from the beginning of the surface water plant's usage in our system all the way up to about 2017. In that time span, our new water treatment plant has used approximately 80% river water, 20% well water, and since 2017, that allocation has shifted to about 65% river water, the rest being made up for with additional groundwater. So they saw that increased usage, they wanted to understand why that was occurring, and they wanted to try to brainstorm with us how to be as sustainable as possible with this Buffalo aquifer system that we have. So some of the unexpected fruits of that conversation was the DNR gave us a few recommendations on suggested levels to pump them to for the time being until we can get some more information on potential sources of surface water quality degradation. Again, since about 2017, we've seen drastic declines in the overall quality of the raw water from the river, and the DNR staff had actually reached out to staff members from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and now we have two state agencies that are going to be helping MPS to potentially identify where this source water degradation is actually coming from. So it was a very, very productive conversation thus far, even though it's been fairly brief. But we do plan on providing any data that we can to both entities to make sure that we can figure out a good, sustainable game plan moving forward. So again, this is part one of a two-part series. This is more a high-level introduction. In a future meeting, I plan on having a PowerPoint presentation that shows the historical usage of our surface water and groundwater resources and how that's changed and what that can mean for us moving forward. So there'll be much more information to come.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I can ask a question.
Absolutely.
Mark, does the DNR or the MPCA have any idea if it is a source or a point source or non-point source in terms of the water degradation? Is it coming from runoff, or is it coming from a city, or do we have any information as to where or what might be causing it?
There is some anecdotal evidence pointing to non-point source pollution from a variety of sources. One of the documents that the DNR staff had actually pointed in my direction as a result of these conversations is the One Watershed, One Plan document that is currently in draft form for the Red River watershed. There is a Buffalo Red River Watershed Committee that is basically overseeing all 9 watersheds that pour into the Red River, and they're going through potential mitigation strategies to increase the water flowing through all those areas. So that document is currently in draft form. I have received that document and I'm currently reviewing it now. But as far as isolating specific point sources, I don't think that document goes into that level of detail. I think it would be difficult to do so with the resources that have been allocated at this time, but that's a definite question I can ask.
How far does the Buffalo Red watershed, how far south does their work encompass?
It goes as far south as about Lake Traverse and a little bit further south than that, and then it kind of expands east and west, and it kind of tapers as it makes its way north, just slightly. So it does encompass a wide area.
And how far north?
Up to the Canadian border. It actually discharges into Lake Winnipeg, and then through that Lake Winnipeg, the water goes all the way to Hudson Bay. So the water makes a long travel distance.
That's right, but that committee that you're referring to, they studied that entire area?
They study the portions on the U.S. soil. They don't have any authority to conduct studies north of the Canadian border.
Wow, okay, that is a huge area. I was under the assumption that it was, basically like Clay County, maybe into Wilkin County, but okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a relatively new board, from my understanding, but they do have a very wide encompassing range that they try to observe and try to investigate as far as how to mitigate non-point source contamination. Really right now that board is focused on sediment removal because there is a lot of sediment being discharged into the Red River watershed that they're trying to mitigate at this time. So that's kind of their main priority right now, but they are looking at a variety of other contaminants that they want to tackle in time.
Okay, all right. I'd also encourage you to keep the currently proposed diversion project as a part of your question and concern too when it comes to water quality. Just to keep it on your list of questions to ask or concerns to be brought up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mark, the question with regards to the Buffalo Red River Watershed District, is that all the way to the Canadian border, or is that just specifically like Clay County, Wilkin County?
It's all the way to the Canadian border. It encompasses all the watersheds that drain to the Red River.
Okay.
Yep.
any additional questions?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Thank you,
may.
Madam Chair.
Travis, I was just wondering, what level, do we have monitoring of the Buffalo Aquifer at the moment? And do we monitor the levels out there?
We do, yes. The levels right now they're approximately 26 to 22 feet below grade, meaning below the surface of the soil. Historically, when it was at its minimal, it was much further down than that. It was into the 40s and 50s feet down. Since the introduction of the surface water treatment plant in 1995, the aquifer has actually recovered enough stored water to simulate the same storage that it had back in the 1950s. So it has plenty of water in there, but we do want to ensure that we're being as sustainable as possible in its use.
Was the increase in well usage due to the degradation in the river?
Correct, yes. Since about 2017, we noticed that the hardness, and specifically the non-carbonate type hardness in the river, had jumped as much as 50% on an annual basis. That is the main driver for our softening chemicals, is the hardness in the raw water. So with that increase in the specifically non-carbonate hardness, the choices were really simplified down to either use additional chemical at an increased cost or add additional groundwater to blend out that issue as much as we can. So in an effort to be as economical as we could with our resources, we opted to do some blending in an additional rate. And in doing so, it caught the attention, showing that there was a change in the trends of our annual usage, and then the question was brought up from there.
And what is the financial impacts of using well water versus river water? Have you done an analysis based off of maybe 1 million gallons of well water versus 1 million gallons of river water?
It depends on which wells you use. Our softest wells, it would cut our chemical usage in approximately half, if not a little more so. The problem with doing that on an annual basis is some of these raw water sources have certain potential byproduct formations that we want to kind of avoid. For our softest wells, we need to watch out for bromide in the source water. With us being an ozone disinfection process, the oxidation of the bromide could form disinfection byproducts that we want to really kind of avoid. So we try to blend from all of our wells based on the time of year. And really, depending on the time of year, the heat, the overall demand, it really kind of dictates which well we choose. So we wouldn't be able to necessarily pin down a specific well field running for a length of time, but the blending aspect, it does save us a significant amount.
Sure. And I'd like to just add off of Councilmember Duran's comments about the diversion authority. The diversion authority does have an immense amount of environmental information that's been compiled over many years. And some of that information could come in useful for the MPCA and the health department in looking into reasons or causes for the increase in water degradation. So I'm sure I can figure out how to get you in contact with the right folks to talk and gather that information.
Yep, absolutely.
Additional questions? So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
real quick, are we the only ones experiencing the same type of increase of degradation than anyone else taken from there, or is it kind of system-wide?
It's kind of a system-wide issue. Pretty much anyone who's pulling surface water from the red is undoubtedly seeing the same effects that we are. Depending on how north or how south they are located relative to us, it could change slightly based on where tributaries eventually drain into the Red River, so that may change the source water chemistry a little bit. But I think system-wide there's a general trend that's pointing in this direction.
So it's not just localized to a certain area that could be increasing more than others?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you very much.
Look forward to seeing your presentation.
Thanks.
Travis?
Nothing else to report.
Nothing else to report? I entertain a motion to accept the manager's report.
Approval.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and second to approve the manager's report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion carries. There's no executive session today. And so I need a motion to adjourn.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you guys later.